Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. Together, we're uncovering human experience by exploring physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual stories. With me, your host, Urmi Raval. Welcome to the Creativity series, where we explore creativity as a human experience. Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. I hope you're enjoying your journey to find you. I should also say, welcome to the first episode in the Exploration of Creativity as a Human Experience series. Yes, that is a bit of a mouthful for a name for a series, so I'm just going to shorten it to the Creativity series. This is actually a series that has been kind of in the pipeline, in the making, since even before I started the podcast. And I'm just so excited to be able to bring it to you. So as a creativity coach in one of my day jobs, okay, I'm working with people on a daily basis, on a weekly basis in aspects of life and success skills. And this series is something that I know I've really wanted to put together to show you how powerful connecting with and expressing your creativity really is. So as humans, we are all creative. Creativity, being in our creative center, is actually our natural default mechanism. That's where we default to. And we see this. We see this when children are playing. They are incredibly expressive, they're incredibly creative with their ideas, and that's who we essentially are. But over the years, as days and years go by, we come to have ideas and concepts that are instilled in us. And the creative aspects of us are lessened or quietened or pushed aside in favor for the more accepted ideas and norms, which I have several issues with, but this is not the place to go into that. So what happens is we have ideas and concepts and aspects and effectively and attributes. We're even told this of, these are attributes and characteristics that creative people have, and they possess these elements. And actually, there is some reality here to that, yes. But ultimately, the fact is that we as humans are all creative. You are creative. I am creative. It's just that it's the degree to which you harness that or are conditioned to connect and show that part of you is determined ultimately by outside factors. So my conclusion to this has been affirmed not only by my research and knowledge into this area, but more importantly, also by my own personal experience. And obviously, if you'd like to talk more about this, and this is something you're absolutely interested in talking about more, please get in touch. I'm totally open to collaborating, co-creating, connecting, and conversing. A lot of C's there. Anyway, come and join us on the Eternal Paradigm. Come and say hello to us on the Eternal Paradigm Facebook page. Come and drop me a message on Instagram. You can also come and join the group, the Facebook group. But for now, let me bring you back to this episode. A few years ago, I happened to connect with Chandni Umradia, who at the time was a pharmacist. And she was studying healthcare and design at the Royal College of Arts, right? And this is like a research master's. And healthcare setting design has always been a huge interest of mine. Well, it's more than an interest, but I think that in itself is going to have to be a conversation for another episode. But if you're on Clubhouse and you have heard me speaking in one of the rooms, then you will know where that kind of side of me fits in. But let's not talk about that now. So what prompted me effectively to ask Chandni to join me to be a guest on the podcast is exactly her journey, going from being a pharmacist and training to be a pharmacist, which is effectively, within the parameters of pharmacy, there is a yes and a no. There is a wrong and a right for everything, and quite rightly so, okay? But it's science heavy, it's pharmaceutical led, and she's basically gone from that and moved into the field of design. Now, I absolutely hear when in my conversation with Johnny so much of the personal challenges that she's had to face and address in her journey. But also I hear when she's talking, and you'll hear this too, that every stage that she gets to this different stage and all these aha moments keep happening where she's kind of realizing, what is this? There's a new door that pops up. And The choice is hers whether she wants to open it and walk through to see what's there, or whether she stays on the other side with the door closed. What becomes so apparent as we speak is that, for me, in my understanding of where Chandni is in her journey, is that this is just the beginning of a new and exciting adventure for her as she begins her exploration into creativity as a lived experience. This was also her first podcast episode, and I was just so delighted to have her. So please, put your hands together for Chandni.
My name's Chandni. I live in the UK. I'm actually a pharmacist by background, and I've recently ventured into the field of design, which is a little bit unconventional going along that path. So yeah, that's kind of a very short summary of me.
This is important though, right? Because pharmacy, we know, is a very science driven practitioner, effectively, a pharmacist is. Yet you've moved into the design sphere, which is something that I'm familiar with. But tell me, how did you mix the world of science with the world of design? Because, we've spoken about this before, that culturally they're like two opposite ends, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So what happened?
So I was studying pharmacy in 2011, and I did the course. I think I finished in 2015, and then did the usual thing of going and doing my pre-reg. So I'm working in a community pharmacy, and then I worked as a locum pharmacist for a few years, and I was kind of scoping out, what the world of pharmacy was like. I was always really interested in science and really fascinated by like human physiology and chemistry and things like that. That was like one side of my interests, and it led me down the path of pharmacy. But there was this other like niggling side of in the back of my head, which was more of a creative side of me. And I was always sort of interested in, or like enjoyed art. I was always like painting and sketching as a child. And to my parents' like dismay, I guess, like drawing murals across the walls downstairs in the house, like I love mummy and daddy, and then like a huge picture. So I guess they weren't too happy at that point. But yeah, it's always kind of that creative sort of hobby has kind of come into my adult life, and I've always tried to like keep it going as such. But I guess coming from a Indian household, there's this sort of connotation, I guess, of or like expectation from the parents to get into a field that is in their eyes like a secure field, like medicine or like pharmacy, or become a lawyer, or a profession, go down a profession. And I totally get why they thought that way. Like they've come into this country as immigrants, and they didn't have the easiest time. They sometimes came with not much with them, not much money and things. So I understood exactly where they were coming from when they were encouraging me to go down one of these like scientific paths, and or like they were actually quite open with me. They wanted me to enjoy what I was doing, but they just also were really concerned that they wanted me to have security in what I was doing too. So it wasn't that they were just kind of like, just do this thing, we're telling you to do it. I sort of sought out pharmacy because I found it interesting as well. So yeah, I guess it was that expectation that got me into pharmacy in the first place. And maybe my interest in art and all those things didn't get uptaken, I guess, because of the choices I made in GCSEs and A levels. I distinctly remember wanting to choose art A level, and yeah, and I didn't do it in the end. But I instead one of my tutors that was helping me through my like exams, my A level exams, we were kind of practically speaking about what subjects I should take that will help me, get to the career. Because at that point, I was like, there's just pharmacy. Like, I'm going to do pharmacy because it's secure. And that was all that was kind of in my head. And it was something like it's secure and it's something that I am interested in. It's like, okay, that's the only thing that I should be doing. So I kind of just followed that path. And my tutor was also saying, like, if you take the sciences along with the maths, like, they'll all help each other, which is a fair point as well. Like, the subjects all did cross over quite a bit and did help me in various ways. But yeah, part of me still wonders what would happen if I did that art A level. So yeah, I kind of just having that sort of interest and that sort of appreciation for art, I guess, that was always in the background. And not many people knew that, because I never really, I think as I studied pharmacy more and more, I kind of I stopped practicing my creative hobbies as much, I guess. And I kind of regret that now. I should have carried them on.
I get that. I fully get that. Just on that point of the regret that you have between kind of almost leaving behind the creative things that you loved so much to focus on the career that you were kind of expected to do, had then chosen to do because you knew it was secure. What was that like? Because you're in a different space now, you're still learning. So just talk about the regret of not carrying on with the creative side, the real expression of you.
So, on the creative side of things, I think in my head I was going to be a pharmacist, but then I always knew this creative side was kind of there, or the interest was there. And I assumed that I would be a pharmacist, but I'll also have like maybe a side business that was creative or something else that will satisfy both areas. And I guess that's why I was drawn to locuming, because it was flexible and I could maybe do a bit of both. And that was kind of my plan at that time. I also, so when you're in pharmacy, you have three sort of options given to you. You either get into community, you get into hospital, or you get into industry. And I kind of tried to, at one point in time, I tried all of those avenues. And obviously, the avenues that you're not meant to go down, you won't go down. And there were like points in time where maybe I was just chasing, or like telling myself that I wanted to do certain things or chase a certain career, because either it was told to us like there's only three choices, or it was just that, maybe some of my friends were going down that route and they were like, oh, trust me, it's really good. And they were really excited and passionate about it. And maybe I mistook their passion and excitement for mine and maybe got led down, certain paths that maybe weren't for me. Now, when I look back, I can see that the excitement and the passion for, say, applying to a job in a certain field wasn't the same when I was applying, say, to like hospital or industry, for example, or even in community pharmacy, as it is now when I'm looking for opportunities and work. I find them so much more exciting. So
You've kind of brought us on to now, and in that, you've covered so much because you've talked about really being able to reflect and look back and understand that the excitement you were feeling was potentially probably not even yours. And to have that as a reflection at this point is so significant. And so you also said where you are at now. So kind of give us an update of where you are at now and how you got to this point.
So if we go back to being a locum pharmacist, I was just working as a locum, and I was kind of, in my mind at that point in time, was I don't know if I enjoy this as much practically. Like, I think I loved the theory and the science and everything else, but practically I just didn't know if that was the job for me, and I couldn't see, nothing really excited me as much in that field in terms of like the traditional roles that you could have. So I was then kind of like talking to my brother, who's a product manager, and he works in technology. My dad works in technology as well, so I've always kind of been interested in that and exposed to that side of things. Yeah, he was talking to me, and he was like, oh, so if you don't want to do pharmacy, you can't find, something in pharmacy you like, there must be something else. Just figure out what you value and what your beliefs are, and start understanding what you want out of a career. And I think that was pivotal, because if I didn't stop and do that at that point, I don't think I would have taken some of the opportunities that came about. And he was actually the one. So I remember I got home from work one day, and he was like, oh, my friend who's a designer was talking about this really cool course called healthcare and design, and it's like a merge of the two. And he was like, oh, I think you'll really like it. I obviously had no idea about the design world at that point, really. I just kind of heard that, and I was like, wow, there's a mix of healthcare and design. What is that? And I kind of followed my curiosity, I guess, in a time where I wasn't too, excited by anything in like the traditional sense of the word, in the traditional career path. So I was like, okay, well, what's the harm in looking into this? So I started looking into it, and I got more and more intrigued. Like, I wouldn't even say I knew exactly what I was getting myself into at that point. I was just really intrigued by this thing. I was like, what is this? I didn't even, one question I get asked a lot is, was it all planned, and is there a planned career path at the end? And actually, at that point in time, even now to an extent, like, I wouldn't say that I even knew what my career was going to be at the end of that course, but I just knew that I had to do it. So I applied to it, I managed to get onto the course, and it's been sort of an eye-opener, a game changer for me in terms of broadening my horizon and opening up my perspective on things, learning about this new industry that I really had no clue about, and also merging the two, so merging the healthcare and design aspects of things. The course is quite different and quite innovative in the sense that half of us came in from Imperial and we had clinical backgrounds, whereas the other half of the group came in from a design field. So we were working in these mixed cohorts, and it was super interesting seeing how a designer approaches problems versus a clinician, and how both of those perspectives can come together and create something amazing and push the boundaries as well, push the boundaries of the industry. And that completely captured me. And I was completely like I knew at that point, I guess, that I was onto the right path, if that makes sense. I was onto a path that I enjoyed. I didn't know where it was leading. Let me be honest. I didn't know where it was leading at the point. And it gave me a bit of anxiety when people were asking me, so what's the career plan? And I'm like, follow what I enjoy and what I believe in and what excites me. So, yeah, I think one thread looking back on all of this, one thread that runs along all of it is that I wanted to get into pharmacy because I wanted to do something that made an impact and helped people. I think that helping people has been the thread throughout my whole journey so far. It's sort of the purpose side of things, and then the creative side is sort of the pleasure side of things. So it's like merging the two of those sides together that has been like most fulfilling, I guess, in what I do.
That sounds phenomenal.
Sorry, that was a very long way of explaining this.
No, it's great. Go for it.
Coming to today, so I was studying, it was 2 years part-time, the course, and I did it, so I was working as well. I was locoming at the same time. And I also seeked some internships and things along the way to try and really put what I was learning into practice and work for some startups. So I eventually landed a job in a startup, which is a digital pharmacy. It felt like the most perfect union, I guess, because I had the pharmacy knowledge and they were at such an exciting stage where there was no product, there was nothing there, and I was able to design it from the ground up, which is daunting, but really, really exciting. So, yeah, that was kind of where I'm at right now.
That's an amazing place to be, right? Because you, like you said, you've kind of accidentally stumbled onto all of these different things. Some of it was expected, some of it's accidental. But you said that when people ask you about a career plan, that was anxiety inducing. And what has been your kind of learning process for yourself into how to almost like curb that anxiety? Because you said that you started the healthcare and design course, right?
Yeah.
And you realized that it was the perfect marriage. It was like, this makes so much sense to me. I may not know where it's going, but this makes sense. So how did you then deal with the anxiety of the question that people were kind of throwing out at you? Well, what next?
I think at the start I was quite worried because, well, there was no set path. And as the course stated in its
and the prospectus and the course kind of,
prospectus,
yeah.
that is what I
Yeah.
was trying to say. In the prospectus, yeah, it just said this is for people who are looking for an innovative mix of these two fields and looking to apply it in the industry as they see fit. Like, I think there was a leniency towards applying it to a startup or starting your own startup, but it wasn't strictly, there wasn't an end goal there. It was just, here are the tools and you kind of figure it out. And that's how I kind of felt as well. Like, I had the tools now at the end of the course, and I had the theory, and I was still learning, but I knew I discovered something that, you know, I hadn't known 5 years beforehand, and it was completely changed my perspective on things. And then I kind of felt like these tools are really, I could see the value in them after doing the course. And I could see that if you approach healthcare problems in a different way, you can come up with some really innovative and sometimes groundbreaking ideas. So I knew that that was something great was possible. I just didn't quite know what the path was at that point. And I didn't quite know whether it was worrying me because it was working at the edge of an industry, I guess. And I didn't know whether other companies would be open to someone with my skill set. or would know what to do with someone with my skill set, like where to place them, for example, like what's my job role. That was one big sticking point, I guess, at the start. Like, how do you encompass this into a job role? So, yeah, I think what I learned though to deal with the anxiety was to learn to trust the process. I'm still obviously learning, and I think as I learn more and more, I'll learn also how to use these tools in a better way and how to mix them better. I think the thing that worried me at the start as well, and I found quite difficult, was switching from my creative side of my brain to the scientific side, because I had to use both. And honestly, I thought it wouldn't get easier, but it really has. Like now, when I see how I approach problems, it's become almost natural to do that now, to know when to turn the scientific side of my brain on and when to turn the creative side of my brain, I guess, when to use that in what scenarios. So I think that's helped me, knowing when to use what at what time.
That's amazing to be able to firstly develop these new set of tools, and then during the course to be exposed to working with people who don't have a clinical background, who have a design background, is just phenomenal. And the fact that you now know how to switch your brain, to work in this way and work in that way, that's amazing. And like you said, it's still a journey. You're still learning, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the fun part, the learning.
I think I had a misconception as well before I got into design. I kind of thought it would maybe be a bit easier than I thought it personally was going to be, because I knew I always had that creative side of me. So I was like, oh, okay, so I can just use that, right? And I realized that even if you have a natural, inclination towards art or design or anything creative, you still have to practice to build the muscle. And it was hard for me at the start, because I realized that me, from being a kid who was drawing murals all over the wall with like, I love mummy and daddy, and drawing all these things, I think that girl probably would have found it easier to jump straight into design. But I think from working in pharmacy, I guess I learned a new way of thinking as well, which was more structured, more black and white, more this is right and this is wrong, and there's no in between. So I think from learning that, it shaped me as well. So working as pharmacist, I guess, made me very cautious in some ways, very much had attention to detail. You have to make sure everything you do is correct, and you're signing off on things that could harm someone if they take the wrong medicine, for example. So I was sort of, I guess, conditioned into that way of thinking for such a long time, that when it came to switching back to the other side of things, back to the artistic, creative side of my brain, it was quite difficult. And I noticed where the tension points were. I noticed that when it came to our tutors at uni saying, oh, you've got 10 minutes, just draw anything, nothing's wrong, like just do something. And I would stare at the blank page and get really intimidated, because I was like, oh, but is it right? Is it wrong? Is this right? Is this wrong? And that was constantly how I was kind of holding myself back. Now, when I look at it, I wasn't like giving myself the permission to be creative. It was, I sort of put myself in a box where I was pharmacist Chandni, and that's who I am, and that's what I'm good at, and that's, that's all I know what to do. But simply by identifying with that and not allowing myself to being Chandni the designer, that was a really hard part of the journey, I guess. It was knowing that you're holding yourself back, but also fighting against that feeling. So, so it was difficult. It was like retraining your brain almost. Keep on doing the thing until you sort of open up and, I guess, relax enough to be creative. Because I think that was part of it. It's like, in order to be creative personally, I need to be in a relaxed state, and I need to be, allow myself to have the freedom to think in certain ways. Whereas pharmacy was very much like, you've got these regulations to stick by, you need to act in a professional way, you need to do this, that, and the other, which is obviously very required for a pharmacist. Like, you need to be like that. But it was breaking those down, those beliefs about, I think I attached those beliefs to myself. I felt like, oh, I'm only good at these kinds of things now. And maybe I'm not as good as I once thought I was on the creative side of things, because now I'm trying to do it and I can't do it as well as I once thought.
That's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. I learned over time, the more I kept on, like, creativity's learned as much as it's instinctive. So the more you practice being creative, the more creative you're going to be. And I think some people have that misconception that people are just born artists or they're born creatives. And I think to an extent, people do have natural talent, but there's also a lot of practice and a lot of grind as well. It's like making yourself go through that creative process, which can be quite messy. A lot of the time when you're creating something, it's like, oh, this is great. I know what I'm doing. You start doing it, and then you look at it and you're like, this is awful. Oh my gosh, what have I done? Do I even know what I'm doing? And then you have all this like the spiral of doubt. And then I know now that I've been through it a few times that you just got to push through that spiral of doubt and keep going until you see the end. And I think it's that perseverance that really allows you to create something that you're proud of as well in the end.
That's quite a profound description of the learned creative process. And it's just fascinating that you're able to demonstrate that, yes, there's the creativity that I was naturally born with. And here I'm in a space where I've got that natural combined with this logical kind of aspect from pharmacy, which has now progressed into this ability to really express and show and really push beyond the boundaries. And where does that leave you? So all those unanswered, the anxiety inducing questions, all those things that used to come up when you had to do the soul searching to really understand what it is that you want from your career. Are those questions being answered for you here now where you're at?
I think I definitely, one thing that I've got a lot more clarity on over this whole period of time is that, well, I was always questioning my, like, what I was meant to be doing, like my purpose. What is my purpose? And I think lots of people question that a lot of the time. And it's just one of those thoughts that crops up sometimes that you're like, oh, is there something that I could be doing that's different? So I definitely had that thought at the beginning, but I still had it. I didn't think I would have it once I started doing design, but I still had it, and I was like, "What if this isn't the thing?" and that scared me because I was like, "No, this is the thing. This is definitely the thing." And I think that was I noticed that was out of fear of because I was so young, I guess, in the game. I was starting fresh and I was new to something, and I think I was expecting myself to run before I could walk. And I noticed that and I was like, okay, no, that was probably just me getting scared that of this whole transition. And what I really realized was that the two main things that I wanted out of my career was, as I said, making a difference and working towards a cause, whatever that may be. In this case, it's healthcare. So working in an industry that does good to the world, that's something really important to me. And also allowing myself to be creative, and that sort of having that mix of the two brings me peace because it's the purpose and the passion, I guess, intertwined. And I think that's the biggest revelation I kind of had. I didn't know what was missing at one point in time, but now I kind of feel like I'm getting closer to knowing that.
That sounds so lovely. I like that. And I'm so glad that there's clarity there now, because clarity just makes
Yeah.
all the difference. It shifts your power.
Mm-hmm.
That's
100%.
amazing.
Yeah.
And you know yourself that healthcare design is something that I'm incredibly geekishly passionate about as well. And that's how we met, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's lovely to have, obviously your background is clinical. So what you bring to healthcare design is totally different to someone like me who doesn't really have any clinical background at all. I'm literally just the messy creative who likes marketing structures,
Yeah.
or marketing funnels even. So
Mm-hmm.
just listening to your story just really, I feel really uplifted. I feel like you've just walked me on this
Oh,
process. So it's amazing. So tell me, because this whole time has been unearthing so much for you, because every juncture you've kind of gone, okay, do I dig? Do I stop? Do I stand? What do I do here? So, it's the whole thing. It's been like, okay, lots of different things to do.
yeah.
So what were the types of tools that you were using to help your personal growth and personal journey as you were going along? Because you said you've learnt so much stuff. And I don't just mean the tools that you learn in the education kind of learning setting, but what were the other things that kind of cropped up and you went, oh my God, this is new, this is different, I didn't know about this?
So I think things like meditation and journaling have massively helped. I don't think I reflected enough a long time ago. And I think just going through this, and also I think what I found the most difficult is not having a path set out in front of me. Like with some vocations, you know that you have to hit certain things and then you move up the ranks and you do this, that, and the other. And there's like a typical path that you follow. And I think coming from an industry like that and then almost like erasing the path in front of you. That's what it kind of felt like. I felt like I needed some structure again. And I was like, oh, I need to build my own structure. Like there's no structure here. And one thing that I noticed actually in the way I work as well is that I do bring, like you were saying, I do bring the science into it without knowing. So I bring that structure, the way that I think about certain things, working hypothesis driven and, relying on theory and looking up scientific papers about certain things, or, I still like keeping that. But I also, when it comes to, say, when I've learned about the problem space, I also like to then I kind of know that I need to switch to the creative side. And it does take a little bit of shift sometimes, but then I need to be as open and throw as many ideas out as I can and take away that structure. So it's just like, it's a constant building and removing of structure, but it's kind of become a bit more natural. I wouldn't say it's completely, but it's a bit easier to do that now. And yeah, I think, like you were saying, I don't think I would have learnt as much if I didn't stop and reflect at certain points. And that reflection probably came from the fact that I didn't know where to look to get the guidance. I was like, I need to figure this out. Like, what am I going to do after finishing uni? I was very lucky and I got this opportunity, but I couldn't tell you what I would have done outside, like if that wasn't the case. So yeah, I think it's massively helped and made me realize that you need to take a step back sometimes and get the clarity before moving forward. So yeah, I think those two have massively helped.
That's amazing. So if you were talking to somebody who was at school or at college, at university, and they're being given all this helpful advice from schools and parents and whatever have you about career choices, when you look back, if you were to speak to your younger self, what would you say?
I think I would say don't always take things at face value and take the world as almost like black and white. So there were these three choices that I had, or these, few set paths. Ask yourself what you're actually excited about and follow that excitement. I think that's something that I've massively learned as well. Follow the excitement and also face your fears, because there was probably, if I didn't face my fears along the journey, I don't think I would have pushed myself as far as I did to actually make the leap. Because that's what a lot of people ask, like, how did you end up actually identifying yourself as a designer? And that was the hard thing. It was actually the identification of, okay, I'm a designer now, because you're in this weird space in some respect where you're not pharmacist enough to be with the pharmacists and you're not designer enough to be with the designers. Also, you think, like, you put these boxes on yourself, right? So yeah, I would say speak to as many people as possible as well about what they're doing. And I don't think I did that enough when I was younger. I don't think I reached out to people enough to be curious as to what they're working on, because maybe you'll find that excitement or that spark from hearing their story. And always realize as well, there's, as I said, like, my dad's in technology and my brother is, and they're all like, interested in innovation and things like that. And I think what I didn't realize is that even if I'm in pharmacy, in the pharmacy industry, there's always an innovative side to every industry. There's always some people moving that industry forward. And I don't think I realized that at the time, which you wouldn't really realize because you don't get taught that. You always get taught that, you work your way up. And I guess maybe the people that are right at the top can be the innovators, but that's not necessarily true, I don't think. I think you can step into that role if you give yourself permission to.
So let me add in the extra dimension or the extra layer to the onion here, because you've talked about cultural expectations and growing up being Indian, or for Indian immigrant parents. Snap, same. Let's kind of bring the W word into it. You're a woman as well. So what has that experience kind of showed you in your connection to creativity and moving from a almost like a rigid profession, which clearly has black and white because it's necessary, to moving to this creative realm as a designer. What has your experience kind of been from the aspect of being a woman of South Asian heritage?
I think what I found, I guess, is that I like paving this path has obviously been unconventional to some degree, and it required me to be a leader in some aspects and like find the opportunities that I needed to find. And I kind of felt that, yeah, I didn't identify with myself as a leader or anything like that. And it was stepping into like doing certain things and facing fears that I guess I had in the back of my mind about, taking being taken seriously as a woman as well, I guess, trying to pave her own path. I didn't know how that was going to be received. And yeah, I think one thing to, I guess, touch on as well that was a bit kind of lingered for a while, I guess, was this feeling of guilt that I was working, like I've got all this professional experience in pharmacy, and it was such a like hands-on profession where I was helping to treat patients, and I was face to face with them. And then I was kind of going into this transition where I wouldn't be patient facing and I wouldn't be, doing the actual caring. And I felt like that, I don't know, well, it might not be anything to do with like being a woman or anything like that, but I felt the guilt that I wasn't contributing as much by still working in the same field, working towards the same thing, but I wasn't being hands on. And that took a little bit of time to get over because I was like, am I making the most impact that I can make? And I realized later on that it's not just about being hands on, you can still have that same impact if you're facilitating even the hands on care for people. So, yeah, I think that was a big learning curve as well.
That's an immense load to have to process, right? Because that guilt sounds like a very typical woman thing to feel. Like,
Yeah,
I'm saying that, and I know that it's very almost, very narrow in my thinking, but the fact that you were so purpose driven and wanted to really help and felt that moving away from a hands on caring for patient one to one in the context of community pharmacy was actually taking you away from really being able to help people. And you've had to grapple with that. That's big.
yeah, I guess this is one of beliefs that I was talking about when when my brother was saying, uncover your beliefs and like challenge your beliefs because sometimes they're not always true. And that's one thing that I've learned over all of this time. Like some of these beliefs that you hold on to, they don't serve you and they're not actually true when you really dig down into it.
You're absolutely right. Do you know that? And not a lot of us actually feel brave enough to genuinely challenge those beliefs. We sit in the comfort zone and in the fear of the known and the fear of the unknown. But it's fine because I still have my beliefs that totally limit me and make me feel rubbish. I'll hold on to them.
Yeah.
That's incredible that you've been able to do that and that you're able to actually talk about it. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I would have spoken about it if it wasn't for the reflection. If I didn't have the clarity on why I was feeling certain things, I would have just put it down to, oh, I'm fearful of this thing, or like, maybe I'm not meant to do that thing, or whatever it was. So, yeah, I think that was it.
So, where you're at now, okay, we have guests who come on, and I always like to give guests the opportunity to leave a question out there for listeners. So, in terms of, what question have you asked yourself that has just been incredible or was one of the biggest questions that gave you the biggest aha moment? Do you know what that was? Or have there just been so many that you can't even think of one?
I think the biggest question was what impact do you want to have on the world? Because I realized that you're going to have a job, you're going to have to earn money. Like, why would I not want to do something that, in my case, like I wanted to do something that helped others, and I knew that was always going to be a part of it. And I think that was one of the biggest jigsaw pieces, I guess, that came in. And I then practically was looking at my skills and thought, okay, I have these skills. How can I use these in order to make that impact? So I would definitely say reflecting on what impact would you want to have and what would you also regret not doing. I think I kind of live by that a bit. So if I ever think that, I'll regret this one day, I'll do it, like even if I'm scared. Even like podcasting. I was very nervous and I was like, I've never done this before. But then now I've learned to spot that and go in that direction. So it is hard sometimes, don't get me wrong. It's very scary. But yeah, I'd say I would probably leave that question with you.
Brilliant. Follow the fear.
Yeah,
Step into it.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's amazing. So tell us, if we want to get in touch with you, or if someone wants to talk to you about the course that you've done or where you're at, what your process and journey's been like, how do they get in touch with you?
So you can look me up on LinkedIn. My full name's Chandni Umradia. And I'm also on Instagram, chandni.design. It's a new Instagram page, and I'm trying to share more about my journey as I'm learning. It is quite daunting. See, that's one of the things that has been quite daunting, putting stuff out there for people to see. I don't know. I'm still working on it, so be patient with me on that one. So yeah, that's kind of the two main places, I guess.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Eternal Paradigm. I'd like to take this opportunity just to remind you that your comments, your feedback, and your listenership is incredibly valued.